Hello, welcome to Kaiba Health and Life. I'm your host, Kristen Wolosinovich, and I'm so excited to have my guest celebrity co-host, Grammy Award-winning member of Full Force, and of course, House Party 1 and 2, Paul Anthony.
Yes, how are you? How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for co-hosting with me today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Kaiba Health and Life, you are in from Brooklyn. Big ups to Brooklyn.
Okay.
In the Michigan studio. And to my right, Paul, in the hot seat. Very honored and privileged to have Dr. Kathy Burton Brown, psychotherapist. How are you?
It's a good day.
It is a good day. You know, I met you recently. It was very serendipity in my meeting you. And I said, what do? You said, I'm a therapist. I said, I need your phone number. I need your cell number now. But, you know, really excited to have you on the show. And when Paul's on the show as well, because today we're going to talk about emotional resilience. And Paul, you are a champion. You are a champion of cancer. And your journey has been since 2006, roughly, correct? When you were originally diagnosed. For our listeners and viewers, just tell us a little bit about your cancer journey.
Yes, diagnosed in 2006, going into 2007 with a third to fourth stage of mantle cell lymphoma. Then after that, I had a bone marrow transplant, but then it came back. It was myelodysplastic syndrome, and acute myeloid leukemia. And I'm here by the good grace of God and my brother's 10 for 10 bone marrow transplant, courtesy of bow-legged Lil.
And when Paul's out telling his story, you know, the diagnosis it was very grim when you first received it, but your emotional, your mental, your mindset, it never went there.
Right.
And that's why Dr. Kathy is on the show today, because, you know, whether it's a medical diagnosis or whether it's life, right?
Right.
We need this resiliency. So tell us a little bit about how long you've been practicing and what you specialize in.
I have been practicing in the field since 1984, and I've been in private practice for the past 15 years.
Okay.
My mother was a social worker who went from being a battered wife to helping women, single mothers particularly, and she taught me how to maximize my skills to help others. And our journey in life is really to help others.
So when I first met you, your energy and your spirit is exactly what I'm seeing right now. Your light, love, and energy, and I got that right away. You talk to people on a daily basis. You take a lot in. How do you stay emotionally resilient?
Well, I actually take my challenges that I've had in my life. I take my hard places and I use them to empower people who are currently going through the hard place. So I think when we look at our challenges in life, not in a tunnel vision, but in the broad perspective, then you see how your test literally becomes your testimony. So I keep drawing on how can I take the test and what I've been through and use that testimony to help these people who are now going through the test. And so I know my source, and my source for me is God. And so I always go back and continue to refill myself so that I can pour myself out to people who need just a little more in their cup to be able to survive.
That sounds a little bit like Paul Anthony's philosophy, just a little bit. Is this resonating with you a little bit?
Absolutely, through a few different chambers, you know. When she says refill, remember when I was on your show last time, I spoke on people investing time and energy in the refactor, is what I call it. Anything starting with the word refill, reassess, renew, reaffirm, you know, just re-up, you know. So you have to do that. So it was an honor just to hear exactly what you've also been through your personal, you know, that's resiliency personified, you know. So I definitely relate.
So we live in a society that's very fast-paced.
Absolutely.
Right? Myself included. And it's something that I've been trying to be mindful of and gain more patience. And we talk about the resiliency, and we talk about our children growing up and their coping skills or lack thereof. What are some tips that you can give me, that you can give our listeners and our audience to help to help hone these and craft these skills. It's not easy. I'm telling you, I'm working hard on it, but it's not an easy skill set.
It's very challenging being a parent because there's no book that you can read that says this is how you be the perfect parent.
You know how it says what to expect when you're expecting?
Right.
We need it what to expect 17 years after you've had that child, but
It's
exactly.
It's too much to write.
Right. That's exactly right.
My 14-year-old actually was born with a hearing deficit that we didn't discover until she was 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
She was reading lips. She was getting good grades. She was doing everything that she needed to do. But one night she said, I can't hear you. I can't see your face. And that's when we got the revelation there's something going on. After 10 hearing tests, we finally got a diagnosis. So she had to wear hearing aids at 5 years old. And she looked at me and she said, why do I have to wear hearing aids? No one else in the family except Granny, who's in her 90s, wear hearing aids. Why do I have to wear hearing aids? And I said to her, after taking a deep breath and praying silently, Lord, what do I say? But I said to her, how do you know that God doesn't want to use you to empower other little girls who may feel a little different? What if one day girls look up and say, if Karina Brown can do it, why can't I? What if little girls look and say, Karina Brown did it even though she couldn't even hear well? And when people ask you, you're going to have to educate them. So if someone say, why do you wear hearing aids? Then say, why do you wear glasses? It's to help you see better. My hearing aids help me to hear better. So you're going to have to get empowered and know where you're headed. She's an artist. I said, do you know how far ahead you are of everyone else? You know what you want to do in life. So don't be moved when people come up. Stay focused and know that there is a purpose for the pain that you're going through.
That's right.
That is, it's very powerful. And I think, too, whether it's a medical diagnosis, what you went through, Paul, or what your daughter went through, it's very scary. And there's massive anxiety. So it sounds like it's shifting the narrative from the anxiety to calm to ownership and then empowerment.
Absolutely. Some of the traits for emotional resilience is emotional awareness.
Okay.
Knowing how you feel. How do you feel about this challenge? How do you feel about this crisis? And when you know how you feel about it, then you're able to shift it. But if you're not aware of it, then you can't really get your finger on the pulse of it, so you have no control. But when you know that I'm struggling with sadness, then you can surround yourself with some people who will speak life to you and encouragement.
You know, in another interview that I had with Paul, I had asked him, because his mindset was so positive throughout the whole process, I said, did you ever have a day where you felt sad or depressed or felt like a victim? And you didn't. It sounds like you didn't. One thing that I struggled with in general is I don't like those feelings. I don't do sadness well. I don't do depression well. I am positive above and beyond. And that probably isn't always the healthiest thing for me to suppress or not let flow.
Well, I think we have to keep it in perspective. Because when it comes down to life and death, what Paul was experiencing,
it's different.
You don't have room for negativity. And so I tell people I'm allergic to negativity.
Yeah.
Because I need all my strength to fight whatever the challenge is.
Right.
And there's a difference between a challenge and a threat. A threat you can feel like will overwhelm you. A challenge just means you got to roll your sleeves up and fight.
Well, is that the case where you never know how strong you are until that's your only option?
Eleanor Roosevelt said, women are like tea bags. You never know how strong they are until you put them in hot water. So you stick us in hot water as people, and then we find out what's really on the inside. And there are people who are born with being able to be emotionally resilient. And then there are people who don't have that degree.
That's right.
So all of us possess some level of it. It just depends on what degree we have it.
Right. Right.
You know, that's very interesting, and I'm sure you see in your practice, right, the paradigm, the varying shifts of people who have the EQ, if you will, and those who do not. And when they have it and they're able to have awareness but then use logic coupled with it, then I think that's what the balance is. I'm not a psychotherapist. I should be one, I think. But
You would be wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But I do think once you have that you hit the nail on the head. Once you have that awareness, then you can apply logic to it.
Right.
But for me, I know if you suppress those negative emotions, then what happens is they sometimes attach to something within the body, whether it be arthritis, and then it turns into inflammation, then it turns into dis-ease, and then it turns into something much worse. And that's why I'm a work in progress, Dr. Kathy.
We all are, but
Right.
I tell my patients that if this room, if your body was the size of this room, it still wouldn't be big enough to handle emotions that you stuffed in there. They're going to manifest somewhere else. We were never created to handle stress. That's why it shows up in our blood sugars and our blood pressure numbers, cholesterol numbers, because we're not supposed to contain that in the body.
Well,
Right.
also, there's a couple things I want to get to, and you're going to be a reoccurring guest. We're only scratching the surface today, but one of two things is you're seeing with adolescents and you're seeing with children, you're seeing behavioral issues, and then you're seeing this high number of uptick, whether it's Asperger's or they're on the autism spectrum. And of course, there is a lot of data behind that, whether it's vaccinations or what's in our food or what we're exposed to. Of course, that is a different show, but there is a number of behavioral issues. So now you're seeing big pharma. Now you're seeing a lot of these children on meds, and then you're also seeing the drug, alcohol, substance abuse, and then of course the opioid crisis, because we're not built to handle stress. Are you seeing that, and is that a lot of patients that you have come in your office? Not that you can disclose because of HIPAA, but I'm sure it's what you're seeing.
Right. We are seeing that across the board, and there's another level that's a problem, because we somehow come to the place that we think a rule is a bad word.
We can't discipline them.
We can't even say no. They're training teachers now that you can't use the word no with students. You can't even say, that's a good job. Why? Because that implies that every other time they did it, it was not a good job. So we've gone overboard.
I agree with that. Or you can't say it's a good job because another child may get offended.
Right. You can't even win on the baseball team because the other team will feel bad about losing. Well,
My goodness.
that teaches us to prepare. That prepares us for life, because in life, your employer is going to say, no, you can't have that week off.
Right.
In college, your teacher is going to say, no, you can't turn that in late.
So you're also seeing the other side of the spectrum, where you have these parents who have these kids at 5 years old ready for their D1 NBA superstar careers, and they are screaming at these babies and these kids, and they're putting so much pressure. But also, it's not like when we were growing up. It's not one season of sports. It's a year round of hardcore travel sports. And it's too much for these kids.
Well, have you heard the term lawnmower parenting?
No.
Bulldozing parenting?
Helicopter guilty,
yes.
snow plow.
What's lawnmower?
Well,
Tell me about it.
lawnmower is where the parent goes in and mows down any opposition the child might have. So you can't play with this child because they're taller and they may bully you. You can't write this paper because I know how to write it better. Let me write your paper because you need an A. And then when the teacher doesn't get the A, the parent goes up and fights the teacher because that child should have had an A.
The teacher's wrong.
The teacher's wrong. So we're teaching kids, let me do it for you. And then when they get 25 and they say, do it all for me, we're going, no, you're supposed to be on your own.
Right.
But we gave them a crutch that crippled them for life.
So
right.
I will tell you, I was very guilty of that with two daughters, and the one that's 21 is finally getting on her feet, and she has now that autonomy to make her own decisions. But I did that because I thought it was what, every generation wants to do better than the previous one. What I found out I was doing was a massive disservice. But to also counter that is we didn't have texting. So they have access to us 24/7. Oh, I forgot my lunch. Oh, I need this. So they don't fail, or there isn't any recourse or consequences because they can text and mommy or daddy will help them. It's a massive disservice.
This is the thing, though. The thing is,
This is my therapy session.
But what it shows is that you are emotionally aware. because you can say, I missed it there. And that right there
Is huge.
it's huge because it says it can be changed. Even though she's 21, you can now go back and say, you know what? I should have taught you this,
Right.
but I wanted to be a good parent, and I thought that was being a good parent.
So they need to give them the opportunity to exercise their resilience.
That's right.
Otherwise,
That's
how
right.
will they ever know? You know, it's like a phrase I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, you know, Paul, I don't like to hang my hat any further than I could reach it. This way I know it's right there. And I'm like, I like to hang my hat further. Otherwise, how will you ever find out how high you can jump? You know? And the same thing applies with these kids. They need to know. Sometimes they need to get, you know, a little bit so they can get stronger for the next time, be resilient and bounce back.
You know, and they go through their phases. Mine
Yeah.
decided she was going to leave because she got into it with her dad. And she came downstairs. She looked like Santa Claus with these 2 black garbage bags. Don't know why the child didn't use suitcases, but she came. She said, well, I'm leaving. And I said to her, come here, let me give you a kiss. And here's the extra money I have on me. And just so you know, my love for you is unbroken. When you come back, I'll be right here loving you just the same.
I want
That's right.
you to be my mom,
That's right.
my sister, my life coach. I'm just moving in with you. So I will say with kid number 1, I did all that. With child number 2, I pulled back on all of that over-parenting probably when she was around 15. And it has been probably the biggest challenge of my entire life. And it involves Paul saying no. And it involves not being at her beck and call. And it has been really hard. It's been hard.
Have you ever seen a fawn, newborn fawn trying to walk?
Okay.
See
Am I the
struggle?
fawn?
No, you see the struggle?
I do. I
They
see
have
it.
they have to have the struggle. You know what would happen if they never had the struggle?
Right. Wouldn't get their
We
footing.
would never let them leave.
Right.
If they never had the contention with us, we would hold on and love them for dear life and they can't go anywhere. We would become the bulldozing parent even though they're adults. Because I don't want you to experience bad Joe over there. I don't want you to have an accident. And so we would live in fear and hold them tight and not allow them to go to college or anywhere else.
So you're telling me to stay the course.
Stay the course. It's hard.
Thank you.
Of course.
It's
Thank
hard,
you.
but it will pay off one day.
It not today.
Well, that child that left, it's okay. That child that left, she called me up in about 2 weeks and she said, can you get me some gas? I said, maybe at the gas station. She said, Mom, I've never been this hungry in my life. And I said, well, would you like me to take you in the store and get you some food? Or you want to sit down and have a meal? She said, I'll sit down. 2 weeks later, she was back home. Because I literally loved all of her hatred, her anger,
Everything.
and everything else right out of her.
This has been a very, very important conversation. It's fascinating, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. And whether it's raising these children, having to deal with, like we said, this new society, this new awareness that the children have because they also have access to the internet.
That's right.
They have access to awareness. There's also this kind of crazy energy that's out there because they don't know how to, their brains aren't fully developed to handle these emotions that they're having. So it's so important for people like Dr. Kathy to have these conversations. But one thing, and Paul, I don't know if you noticed, your demeanor is calming and it's so positive, and it just gives me so much hope for when you're going through things. It's very traumatic. It's traumatic dealing with very angry children or dealing with a medical crisis. It's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard, but it comes down to, so some of the other things we need.
Yeah, tell me some
when
tips.
we're emotionally resilient, we have to surround ourselves with people who are positive and supportive. And then spirituality is a big piece. I don't care what your spirituality is. For me, it's God. But the spirituality is a big piece because it keeps us grounded. And it keeps us going back to someone higher than us because we don't always have the answers.
Right.
But when we don't have the answers, we go to a place and then get that refill.
That's right.
And we come out and we pour back out. We pour back out. And even with our children, and family members can be most exhausted because they know us. You know, it's kind of, I don't want to preach, but it's kind of like Jesus at home, and they didn't embrace him at home.
You can't be a prophet in your own town, is what you're saying?
They didn't accept him at home, but he goes out into the world, and he's this great prophet, and he's this great person, but at home he wasn't received.
Right.
And that's how we are. So it's okay for us to go to outside people who are grounded, who are spiritual, and get that support. Because we don't always have the answers, but the kids they're kind of like a whirlwind. You know, if you get in that whirlwind in the middle of it going on, you're gonna get hurt.
Right.
You know, so we have to let them go through the whirlwind. We have to let them go through the process. I apologize to my oldest. I said, your journey is not my journey. My journey was very different. I didn't feel the need to do the things that you do, and that's okay. Because in the end, it's your life anyway.
I say to child one, you were 1.0, kid 1.0. I didn't know. I was very young, and I apologize. But I think it's so important, like you said. And one thing, too, that I'm also learning, besides the patience and, you know, other things I'm crafting and honing, is also to, it's okay to go through the emotions. It's okay to feel. It's okay to allow it to flow. Just don't stay stuck in that place.
We have to remember that we are the adults. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they do. I don't care how they act out. My daughter said to me one day, I hate having a mother that's a therapist.
I had a mother that was a therapist, too.
But I asked her why. You always know what to do.
Right.
And so she said to me, why don't you ever argue with me? And I said, honey, I've been trained to talk killers off a ledge.
You know,
why would you move me to an emotional place?
Right.
That is so, I can do my mother to a T. I can imitate her to a T. So if I call emotional, she puts her therapist voice on, and I will say, oh, girl, please, that's not what I want right now. I need my mom real quickly. But you're absolutely right. It's maintaining that calmness. It's maintaining your composure. And it's also two things. You don't drink that emotional poison or take it personal.
Right.
You can't take it personal. My children would tell you, even when I'm angry, I talk just like this. They have never heard me scream at them. That's an emergency voice. If they were going to walk in front of a car.
That's a very good point, because in addition to that, I'm a firm believer that energy moves. People leave energy out of the equation, and that blows my mind, because God is energy, His Spirit is vibrancy. So, you know how many times I've hit my children when they were coming up? Never. I've never had to put a hand on them, because my energy, they'd feel it, and they'd know, and they know what they know. So I never had to do that, you know. I just you feel my presence, my energy, and you know, don't go there. And then they come with laughter, and they say, Dad, we don't mean to laugh. God has a sense of humor. There's a lot of clowns running around out here. It's okay. We can laugh. It's okay. But just, you know your place.
Well, and I do believe that you both have very similar philosophies and disposition. And I think we have had generations over generations that have been screamers, and they have been, we have been raising these kids the wrong way, and it has to stop. It's all what we knew.
They did what they knew to do. And,
it is,
and we get the opportunity to look from a different perspective and say, wow, that really didn't work. My grandmother was super cold, no hugs, no kisses. My mother said at 10 years old, if I ever have kids, I'm going to be affectionate and love on them. And that's what she did. So there's a generation that was broken. That's trait was broken.
That's the truth. And, Paul, you're visiting Michigan, but I think real quickly, it's this manufacturing town. It's very labor intensive. So they would go and work 40 to 80 hours.
Right.
They would come home and they were overly stressed and they took it out on the kids, or,
bought them everything.
Bought them everything to compensate for the yelling or the disrespect or the mistreatment. And then you were seeing these generations that didn't know how to handle these emotions, and there were screamers. And for me, I come from an Irish Catholic redheaded family. They're very passionate. And I have worked really diligently to break that cycle in having these thoughtful conversations with these girls. The other side of the coin is the same with yours. As soon as I respond like this, they say, what is wrong with you? You don't care. But it's really helped me personally, emotionally, spiritually. It's hard, but it's going to serve them very well in the end.
Good.
And I'm excited. I'm excited for their future.
Well, it's a difficult challenge to move from being a dependent little girl to an independent woman.
Right.
And so the struggle of finding self-identity is just, they have so much more that they have to deal with than we had to deal
Right.
with. So it's triple.
And it's
hard.
patience.
And the patience
I'm
goes a
learning.
long way.
So, yeah. Oh, Dr. Kathy, only the beginning. You're going to have a regular segment on Kaiba Health and Life. So to end the segment, what would you say are your top, 5 recommendations for emotional resilience?
My top 5 recommendations is develop the right attitude.
Okay.
Attitude determines everything.
Attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude. Stay in the right frame of mind. Because my godmother said one time, never challenge worse. It could always be worse. Always. Number 2, be positive. Be positive. Don't let anyone dull your shine. Don't let anyone take your... Be positive and stay positive. Number 3, eliminate all toxic relationships. Don't try to help them. You're not ready yet. When you get to the place you got the strength, go back and get them. But until that, leave toxic relationships behind you. Become aware of your own mental state. Know what changes you. If you walk away from someone and they leave you feeling down and feeling ugly and they're always criticizing you, you don't need them in your life. And number 5, never give up.
Sure.
Never give up.
How can people get a hold of you?
You can get my business number is 810-845-0200, and I'm on Facebook. I'm an open book. I'm on Facebook.
Dr. Kathy Burton Brown, psychotherapist.
Wonderful.
Thank you beyond words.
Thank you for having me. This has been
Thank
so much
you.
fun. Nice to meet you,
Absolute-
Paul.
Oh, absolutely.
Paul
absolutely.
Anthony, thank you
Yes.
for being my guest co-host,
Oh, yeah.
flying in from Brooklyn, baby. And we have okay weather, so you're welcome.
Okay.
And a big thank you to our listeners and viewers. I'm Kristen Wolisanovich, and this has been Kaiba Health and Life.